There is a clock that has been running for almost 80 years. It doesn't tell you when to wake up. It doesn't tell you when your meeting starts. It supposedly tells us something much more uncomfortable: how close humanity is to catastrophe. And right now it says 85 seconds to midnight, closer than during most of the Cold War, closer than when thousands of nuclear weapons were pointed across the planet, closer than at any other moment since the clock was created, which sounds pretty terrifying. But there is something strange about those 85 seconds. They don't actually measure time. Humanity isn't going to end in 85 seconds, or 85 years. In fact, there isn't even a formula converting these seconds into our chances of survival. So, what exactly is this clock measuring? And why are scientists telling us that it has never been this close to midnight? To understand that, we need to go back to the moment humans suddenly gained the ability to destroy cities in seconds. In 1945, the first atomic bombs were used in war. Scientists had helped create a weapon unlike anything humanity had possessed before. And some of them were deeply worried about what came next. Scientists connected to the Manhattan Project helped establish the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, trying to warn the public about the new nuclear age. 2 years later, the Bulletin needed a cover for its magazine. An artist named Martel Langsdorff was asked to design it. She considered using the symbol for uranium. But uranium wasn't really the message. The message was urgency. So instead, she drew something everybody understood: a clock, its hand approaching midnight. And she placed it at 7 minutes to midnight. Why 7? Was there a secret calculation? A probability model? 7 stages before nuclear annihilation? No. She basically thought it looked good. The starting position of one of the world's most famous symbols of catastrophe was chosen largely because an artist liked the composition. But soon, the clock stopped being just a drawing. In 1949, the Soviet Union tested its first atomic bomb. Now the United States was no longer the only nuclear power. The arms race had begun. The clock moved from 7 minutes to 3. Then came an even more frightening weapon: the hydrogen bomb. In 1952, the United States tested its first full-scale thermonuclear device. The explosion destroyed an entire Pacific islet. The Soviet Union soon demonstrated thermonuclear capability of its own. In 1953, the clock moved again. 2 minutes to midnight. For decades, this would remain one of the most frightening readings in the clock's history. But then something very weird happened. October 1962. American reconnaissance discovers Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba. The United States and Soviet Union enter a confrontation that could escalate into nuclear war. For days, the world waits. Military forces prepare. Messages pass between Washington and Moscow. One mistake could potentially change everything. Surely this must have pushed the Doomsday Clock almost to midnight. Except, the clock didn't move at all. It stayed at 7 minutes. The crisis developed and ended too quickly for the Bulletin to properly evaluate it while it was happening. And what happened afterward is even stranger. Washington and Moscow improved direct communication. Then the United States, Soviet Union, and United Kingdom signed the Partial Test Ban Treaty. And in 1963, instead of moving toward midnight, the clock moved backward, from 7 minutes to 12. The clock wasn't measuring how frightening yesterday had been. It was trying to represent where humanity appeared to be heading. And sometimes, we headed in the right direction. In 1991, the Cold War was ending. The United States and Soviet Union agreed to major reductions in strategic nuclear weapons, and the clock moved farther from midnight than it had ever been. 17 minutes. Imagine that for a moment. 1991, 17 minutes. 2026, 85 seconds. So what happened? Well, the clock itself changed. Originally, it was mainly a warning about nuclear weapons, but humanity became extremely creative at inventing new ways to endanger itself. In 2007, climate change formally entered the clock's deliberations. Then came growing concerns about biotechnology, cyber systems, artificial intelligence, and the ways all of these technologies could interact with military power. By 2020, minutes no longer seemed urgent enough. For the first time, the clock entered the realm of seconds. 100 seconds to midnight. In 2023, 90. In 2025, 89. And now, 85. There isn't one reason. That's actually the problem. Nuclear weapons still exist in enormous numbers, and recent conflicts have involved countries with nuclear weapons or countries operating under their shadow. But now, imagine adding other risks on top. Climate change continues altering the physical systems civilization depends on. Artificial intelligence is becoming increasingly capable and increasingly integrated into important systems. And AI is also entering military decision-making, which becomes especially uncomfortable when those decisions involve nuclear weapons. Imagine a warning appears on a screen. An AI system analyzes the data. It says an attack may be happening. A human has minutes to decide whether the machine is right. AI doesn't need to become an evil robot to create danger. Sometimes, it only needs to be confidently wrong at exactly the wrong moment. But even that isn't the strangest threat appearing in the clock's modern assessment. Imagine looking at your hands. Your left hand and right hand contain the same basic parts, but they are mirror images. You can't perfectly place one over the other. Something similar happens with the molecules used by life. Life on Earth overwhelmingly uses particular molecular orientations. But scientists can imagine their opposites. Mirror life. In theory, sufficiently advanced biotechnology might someday allow researchers to create self-replicating organisms built from this reversed biological machinery. And that's where things get uncomfortable. Predators, enzymes, and immune systems evolved alongside ordinary life. A truly functional mirror organism might interact with these defenses in very unusual ways. Scientists have therefore warned against creating self-replicating mirror bacteria because the consequences could potentially be extremely difficult to control. To be clear, mirror bacteria are not currently spreading around the planet. This is a future risk, but that's exactly the kind of thing the Doomsday Clock is designed to worry about. Not just the catastrophe already happening, the technologies that could make future catastrophes possible. At this point, you may have noticed a problem. Nuclear weapons, climate change, AI, biotechnology. These are completely different things. So how do you turn all of them into 85 seconds? Well, you don't. There is no equation. Today, the clock is set by the Science and Security Board of the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists in consultation with other experts and its board of sponsors. They examine things like nuclear arsenals, climate indicators, emerging technologies, and international efforts to reduce these dangers. Then they make a judgment, which means the Doomsday Clock is not a scientific instrument in the normal sense. It's a metaphor. Think of it less like the battery indicator on your phone, and more like a smoke alarm. A smoke alarm doesn't tell you, your house will burn down in exactly 85 seconds. It tells you, something is wrong enough that you should probably pay attention. And this is also why the clock has critics. Trying to compress nuclear war, climate change, artificial intelligence, and biological threats into one number can create an illusion of precision that doesn't really exist. And that's a fair criticism. But maybe precision was never the point. There isn't a giant doomsday clock ticking inside a secret bunker. There isn't even one physical clock continuously counting down. And if the hand reaches midnight, nothing automatically happens. No alarm sounds. No hidden machine activates. Midnight is simply the symbol for catastrophe, which means the clock isn't really telling us when the world will end. It's trying to tell us something else. How dangerous the technologies we've created have become, and how well, or badly, we are managing them. Nuclear weapons don't launch themselves. Climate policy isn't written by the atmosphere. Rules for biotechnology and AI don't appear automatically. Humans make these decisions, which is scary. But it's also the hopeful part, because the hands have moved backward before, from 7 minutes to 12, and eventually, all the way to 17. The clock has never been a countdown to an unavoidable ending. It's a warning, and warnings only matter if there is still enough time to do something about them. Right now, according to the Doomsday Clock, it's 85 seconds to midnight,